This is Melissa, and today is the 1st of December, 2024, and I hope you're all doing really well. I wanted to just quickly bring some things forward for you to think about and to tell you why I chose this Redux. It really was a follow-up to a conversation that I had on Real History last week with Suzanne from Canada about yoga, and it got me thinking about things that Alan had said about yoga, and I found this conversation that he had with Alex Ansary in August of 2008. It's two-part, and I may trim just a few things out, but it really it's well worth hearing. And there is a talk upcoming, and that at some point in the next few weeks you are going to hear Alan say in a talk that we are entering into a new dark age, and it will be much worse than anything that the Catholic Church or anybody else put upon us hundreds of years ago. And I think when you listen carefully to the back and forth between this host and Alan, as well as the people who call in, I think you can understand where I was going with my thinking. So it's kind of a stream of consciousness. I'm having, a conversation in my own head, perhaps with Alan and his work, and I'm bringing it to you, and that's really how I always approach this. So things that I said last week tie in with what I'm saying now, with what I might say next week, is that kind of flow. And I get comments from people who say, I can't keep up with your output. I listen to a lot, but I can't keep up with it all. And I'll just say, I'm here doing it, and I can't keep up with it either. So that's just fine. If you pick up on a high point now and again, I think that's good enough. It's good enough for me. I wanted to just concentrate on this talk a little bit, and then I will cover some of the other news of the day. But Alex and Alan started off talking about aerial spraying, storm creation, chemical clouds, HAARP, the war on farmers, floods, droughts, etc. And so that will tie in to the fact that COP29, Conference of the Parties, just ended in Azerbaijan about a week and a half ago, and there's some criticism because the $300 billion a year that the rich nations have pledged has been, decried as not being adequate for the problems. And there is a good article from Michael Chusudovsky of Global Research on his Substack, entitled COP29, Climate Instability Worldwide. Does the U.S. military own the weather? Weaponizing the weather as an instrument of modern warfare? So he points out some coincidences and some absurdities, such as the fact that Azerbaijan is one of the largest producers of oil and natural gas worldwide. When I was speaking with Suzanne last week in Real History, we got to talking about the con of some of these sustainable initiatives, and we talked about wind turbines, and somehow, not because of anything I said, but somehow this came up at the Thanksgiving table, and one of my brothers mentioned a trailer that he had seen for a new series coming out of Hollywood entitled Landman, starring Billy Bob Thornton. And I may play a clip as part of this talk, or at least link to it. But he's explaining to someone why wind turbines are necessary for the oil industry and the whole scam of it. And what he's saying by scam is how environmentally unfriendly they are. And when I played the trailer, I noticed that it was a co-production between Paramount Pictures and Canada, maybe Canada Films. I did not see which production company or arm of the Canadian film industry was involved. But I thought that the timing of this was very interesting because, you know, you've got the what they call the Keystone Pipeline. They were to be transporting gas that it was to be, you know, much more environmentally friendly. We're not going to transport this on by rail anymore. There's too many, you know, it's too dangerous to have oil spills and that kind of thing. So we're not going to do that anymore. And then, you know, politically, this was halted. So it's going to be very interesting what happens. Again, I say the timing of a show like this, is it time to revive this free flow of gas and oil between Canada and the US and all the way down to Mexico, right? Well, Trump has said that on his first day of office, he is going to slap a 25% tariff on China and on Canada and on Mexico. So Trudeau flew down to Mar-a-Lago to see Trump, and according to the New York Times, he is the first foreign G7 leader to visit President-elect Donald J. Trump since the election. He's under pressure to persuade Mr. Trump to back down from his tariff threat. So they met at Mar-a-Lago. They had a long 3-hour dinner, etc., etc. Mr. Trudeau has been scrambling to formulate a plan to respond to the threat made this week by Mr. Trump to impose a 25% tariff unless Mexico and Canada take action to curb the arrival of undocumented migrants and drugs across their borders into the United States. So this USMCA is the successor to, I call it USMCA, I don't know what other people say, but it's the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, and it is the successor to the North American Free Trade Agreement. So I don't think a president can just step in there and do something like that, but he can certainly make a threat, and threats are good. They sound good. So also at Thanksgiving, Elon Musk, Trump's new sidekick buddy, was there, and they were doing a little bit of table dancing to the Village People's YMCA song. Interesting choice. Just, if you know anything about the Village People. But this is an interesting thing. You know, I've heard people, more mainstream people say, is Musk using Trump or is Trump using Musk? What does this all mean? And I like to remind myself of things that Trump said, people that were involved in that program, and also comments that Elon Musk made about this technology and about at that time. So I don't need to rehash all of that. That is out there. So let's get back to the talk for a moment, this upcoming discussion between Alex and Alan. What you have in this conversation is a good example of the dialectic of the old religion versus the new. I looked up to see what Alex Ansary was involved in now or doing now, and he had posted something back in 2021 on one of his websites saying that because of things that were going on in the world at that time, things that he had known about, known were coming, etc. Let me just interject that pay careful attention to what Alan says at the very end of this interview from 2008. I think you'll find it quite interesting. But anyway, Alex posted on his website that because of what was going on in the world, he was taking a permanent hiatus to focus on his Buddhism, his study of Philip K. Dick as on a spiritual path, the novelist, the sci-fi writer. And so he was no longer going to be talking, writing, etc. So this is interesting. So there's a lot of conversation, and it's a dialectic conversation. And Alan, of course, had no part in either one, because Alan was only pointing out how religions have always been used. He was not trying to save a religion or an old way. He was just simply saying, this is what has happened. This is what is. And I think that is interesting. What I find so fascinating amongst the listeners to Alan is we are all so varied. We're all so different and where we're coming from. And as I said to Suzanne, I don't want to be dogmatic, because the ongoing conversations are helpful, I think. It is not helpful to say this way or the highway. But Alan got quite a few really interesting things in nonetheless. So he wasn't being as an apologist, as they say, for Christianity, although one of the callers into the show was saying something about his Christian upbringing, and then he said, I'm sorry to bring Jesus into the conversation, and Alan immediately interjected and said, why? Everyone else is welcome. And that is the truth. You see, the war on Christianity has been so effective that we're not even supposed to talk about it at all, except to criticize it. Anybody else is fine, the Mayans, the Hopis, the Buddha, everything's fine, but don't say Jesus. So something else that I was listening to was a live stream that Nick Hayes did on Friday, as he was reading from a book entitled The Milner-Fabian Conspiracy. And I'm not sure how you say the author's name, but I think it's Ian Rethue. And the book was published in 2012. And the intro, it was a long live stream, very interesting. Nick does a great job, and I enjoyed it. But the introduction, what he calls the preamble, he covered the publication, The New Age, which was the weekly publication of the Fabian Society. And then he got into Annie Besant. And I think that many of you will find this very interesting, because Annie Besant was really an atheist, a scientific materialist who developed somehow an attraction to this new religion of theosophy, became a member of the Theosophical Society, traveled to India, adopted Krishnamurti when he was a young boy, and then went and told people that he was the new Messiah. He was the reincarnation of the Buddha. But what you find, in addition to all of this, was that she was establishing all over the world these overseas lodges of the I think it was the International Order of Co-Freemasonry. And so, again, Freemasonry has been so important in the promotion of these new religious thoughts, the New Age. So I'll link to that and you can watch it, but I think it really gives a good, succinct, Nick brought us, say, a 45-minute preamble to his getting into the discussion of the book, which really ties into all things that Alan Watt has shared with us over this push to do this. Now, Krishnamurti did later say that he was not the incarnation of the Messiah. He separated himself from Annie Besant and said, "Don't follow me. I'm nobody's guru. I'm not the Messiah," etc., etc. And I think in all things, Alan said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I just want to say, I find that there's always something that I can learn if my mind is not all the way shut down by thinking, oh, don't go there. One thing that Alan said, let me just say, I was so disappointed to realize that I didn't have a transcript for this talk, so I can't put up a transcript for you because nobody ever did one. So if somebody wants to volunteer to transcribe this talk, I always find it really helpful because instead of rewinding to go back and hear it again, I can just look and find it. There it is in print and do a keyword search. But Alan said something to the effect that he followed no religion, no organized anything. He said, I don't want to follow anything except my own free spirit. And I'm like, yes, love it. That's really great. So I want to share a few letters that I received this week from different listeners that I found interesting, and hopefully you will too. Someone wrote in and said, I found your review of Brave New World with Nick Hayes very interesting, and I shall listen to it again. I recalled Huxley and Krishnamurti having become friends, but I hadn't realized that Huxley had written the foreword to one of Krishnamurti's early books. I searched for that, and I found the foreword in the link below. I think it exposes some more of Huxley's view of the boundary where the human and the non-human meet. There are even paragraphs that have much in common with parts of your discussion with Suzanne. So he supplied the link, and I took a look at it, and I actually read Huxley's foreword to Krishnamurti's book. And the book was entitled The First and Last Freedom. And I will link to this, but again, in the Don't Throw the Baby Out with the Bathwater department, there was something very interesting. This is not quoting Huxley, but this is quoting Krishnamurti. He said, to understand the misery and confusion that exist within ourselves and so in the world, we must first find clarity within ourselves. And that clarity comes about through right thinking. This clarity is not to be organized, for it cannot be exchanged with another. Organized group thought is merely repetitive. Clarity is not the result of verbal assertion, but of intense self-awareness and right thinking. Right thinking is not the outcome of or mere cultivation of the intellect, nor is it conformity to pattern, however worthy and noble. Right thinking comes from self-knowledge. Without understanding yourself, you have no basis for thought. Without self-knowledge, what you think is not true. Prince sent me this in the mail, and it's actually a photocopy and a clipping from Alan's book. I don't have it marked right now to tell you what page, but this is in the first volume. And this is at least the second time that Prince has sent this. I know he sent it to Alan years ago because I had it tacked on the refrigerator forever. But this is Alan writing. Alan said, to conquer an evil, we must first disperse into the individual. We must cast off religions, the ties that bind, and stop being afraid. The material world was conquered eons ago by anti-creators, those who could not create but who could reshape into systems made in their own deviant image. They have been liars and murderers from the beginning. To find truth, we must die to the illusion around and familiar to us. We must one by one allow ourselves to appreciate the true miracles of life and consciousness, which is our birthright. This truth and the ability to achieve it within everyone, the tiny flame the controllers wish to extinguish. This truth and the ability to achieve it is within everyone, the tiny flame the controllers wish to extinguish. To be truly born again, we must first look within, put very eloquently by the poet Yeats in Where There Is Nothing. And here that is. I was forgetting we cannot destroy the world, that is, our commitment to the material, with armies. It is inside our minds that it must be destroyed. It must be consumed in a moment inside our minds. God will accomplish his last judgment, first in one man's mind and then in another. He is always planning last judgments, and yet it takes a long time. I was mistaken when I set out to destroy church and law. The battle we have to fight is fought out in our own mind. There is a fiery moment, perhaps once in a lifetime, and in that moment we see the only thing that matters. It is in that moment the great battles are lost and won. For in that moment we are a part of the host of heaven. We shall not come to that joy, that battle, till we have put out the senses, everything that can be seen and handled, as I put out this candle. We must put out the whole world as I put out this candle. We must put out the light of the stars and the light of the sun and the light of the moon till we brought everything to nothing once again. I saw in a broken vision, but now all is clear to me. Where there is nothing, there is God. I got another letter from a listener, and this one moved me enormously. I haven't had a chance to answer it, and I do think I would love to have a chat on a real history with him. He said, I loved your talk with Suzanne on all things India, Japan, and yogic. It was great timing as I just got back from Asia last week, where I spent 2 months on the road in little hostels, mainly meeting other younger people living amazing adventures of all different types. Why I like Suzanne is that much of what she learned about yoga and meditation in Japan, etc., was within my range of growing. I too have spent years searching around Asia and the Middle East in later years, early 2000s, traveling, studying, and searching for truth. It all began back in 1979 when I took a charter flight with Australian Union of Students to Calcutta, and would you believe? And it really got the bug. That time I spent 8 months on the road and subsequently returned to India 20 to 25 times, all told. Eventually, I did find a guru, a really honest and outstanding Sikh man who literally saved my life and taught me many things. You hear many bad things about Indian gurus, and most are true. But for some of us, it is a different story. I eventually made Asian arts my second career after I completed my degree and started a school in Australia where I taught Tai Chi, Aikido, Sumi painting, and yoga for 18 years, while at the same time healing people with the skills I learned from the above arts and massage therapy. He went on to say that he had done a show. He shared that with Victor Hugo last week about his recent travels in China, Laos, Vietnam, etc. And a second talk in which he discussed his healing and what it had meant to his life and how he woke up. So we don't all come into some all-knowing place all at one time. The journey that we're on of understanding the world that we're born into, well, Alan would say that it is the work of a lifetime. And there are many listeners I know to Alan, some of them long-time listeners and some of them very new to his work, who took this and some of them came into an understanding only later, after they had done it, of what possible harm they may have done to themselves. And it is especially tied in with the conversation that I had with Sarah Ham. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and didn't really get into what she meant by reconciliation. But this was the healing that we all need to go through. And yes, the work of becoming an individual, the work of becoming conscious of who we are and then retaining that consciousness, that's individual work. But we also have work to do to heal, because we have all been duped our whole lives by this lying, bloodthirsty, I don't even know what to call them at the top. So someone sent me, I won't get into it too deeply because I think I'm running kind of low on time, but someone sent me something about Elon Musk had made a comment about the Ice Age rabbit hole being kind of a deep one, so somehow perhaps exposing that. So this was an AI answer on Eugenics, Ice Age. I may as well say this is Robert up in Canada, Alberta. I think you'll all remember him, and I am going to speak to his daughter in a couple of weeks, who is in the oil industry as a woman, so I think it all comes full circle in a way. But he said, this is the answer that AI provided. Elon Musk has been associated with the concept of Ice Age eugenics, a fringe philosophy that combines pronatalism, long-termism, and eugenics. This ideology emphasizes the importance of having more children, particularly among the smart or high-achieving population, to ensure the survival and advancement of humanity. And it goes on to explain what is pronatalism, having more children, especially for the elite, those with a high IQ, etc., and long-termism, which is how does humanity survive in the long run. So I laugh because I think I've already said, to me, Musk is Puck in the pantheon of gods, but he's been given a role to play. So I don't think he's one of the good guys because he's exposed something here or there, or has a so-called something to say about free speech, or he's going to go and help Trump drain the swamp, or any of that. What we're watching in the pantheon of gods has always been them ensuring their survival. Let's not forget that. They have nothing but loathing and contempt for us. And that brings me to yet another email that I received from someone yesterday. They said, a while back I came across this interesting paragraph in Eustace Mullen's book, The Curse of Canaan, and I thought it would interest you. So here is the quote from Eustace Mullen's. It's page 12, paragraph 3. I will link to the book. You can find it on archive.org. The legendary symbol for Nimrod, and we've already covered this, and you've seen the signs and symbols short that was done by a listener, that the arms folded across the chest, this is the X. It's called Osiris Rising. The legendary symbol for Nimrod is X. The use of this symbol always denotes witchcraft. When X is used as a shortened form meaning Christmas, it actually means to celebrate the feast of Nimrod. A double X, which has always meant to double cross or betray, in its fundamental meaning indicates one's betrayal into the hands of Satan. When American corporations use the X in their logo, such as Exxon, that's got 2 X's, recall, the historic Rockefeller firm of Standard Oil of New Jersey, there can be little doubt of this hidden meaning. the listener who sent this said, I can't speak to the veracity of Eustace Mullins or that connection, but it's very interesting nonetheless. I wonder if you could speak to this or know much about the X and Nimrod connection, or more specifically or significantly, how this might relate to Elon Musk. I think a good place to start might be that signs and symbols. And I also think that there are things even that Musk himself has said. He called himself Dark MAGA, which is evidently some kind of, I don't know, highest degree of the Church of Satan. MAGA, MAGA's fifth degree, Magia, Magi, Magic, Magus. Go figure what that means. And he famously wore his jacket that says Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order white jacket. This listener goes on to write, Allen said on page 52, cutting through book 1, that January 20th, 2025, Inauguration Day, is the start of the age of Aquarius, their business plan. And the sign project guy, that's rare. That's the one I've posted a couple of his things and I call him the original walk and talk. So the sign project guy reminded me of this on one of his YouTube videos. Isn't it funny, this writer says, how the script is bringing their order out of all that chaos? And it seems Allen had it down to the day with his research and their zodiacal business plan. Now, this is interesting, and it is right there on page 52 of the Cutting Through book, that indeed January 20th, 2025 is both Inauguration Day for Trump and the start of the age of Aquarius. Now, I know that Allen, like many, many other thinkers, said that the exact date or time frame, it varies depending on what you read or what you look at by as widely as several hundred years. So I'm not sure that this was carved in stone, but we are definitely going into a new age, and why not call it Inauguration Day for Trump? So the writer of this letter goes on to say, it's also strange how Elon Musk came on the scene via Joe Rogan 5 years ago, isn't it? I mean, he's been on the scene for a while, but, as in terms of the role that he's playing right now. They palled up, and Rogan and Alex Jones were friends since the late 90s, and they all three seemingly have been at the forefront of backing Trump, of what would have historically been those against a new world order. Members of the Christian right, they've now been annexed into bringing this about, cheering it on, their heroes leading the charge. I mean, you can even see Musk posting his tweet with the Trump's Novus Ordo Seclorum written underneath just after the election. I have to admit, as evil as it is, how cunning and fascinating a trick it all is. You kind of have to sit back and go, wow, at the deceptions wielded upon people. And for me personally, how did little me steer clear of their trickery? The greatest miracle, as Allen said it, right? Incredible man he was, such a deep gratitude and respect. So he then goes on to write about RFK Jr. and the Maha thing. He said, in my opinion so far, this is because they've already done the Renaissance period to quell the frightened livestock, because before the technocracy and transhumanism clicks into place piece by piece. I wonder what your take on that is. Well, I think you'll hear a little bit of my take just in this selection on this Redux, because Alan gets into, even at, like I said, at the very end, what it's going to look like, how he thinks this is going to come down. And it's all there, including transhumanism, or what we might as well now call post-humanism. So sometimes I have said, and I want to clarify, higher consciousness. The term higher consciousness, as Alan points out in this talk, is really a Freemasonic idea. So when I say it, I am saying it in a way that I understand it from Alan, and from my own experience is there is a place that we can get to when we clear away the rubbish and the indoctrination. It is an individual path. And in this, I am in complete agreement with Alan that we are not collectively spiritually evolving. The quickening was a term, not just out of those Highlander movies, or what happens when a mother is experiencing those increasing birth pangs that tell her that the baby is on the way. But the quickening was something that was said about evolution. And I was thinking the only quickening that I have seen is people quickening their step to comply, or, quickening their pace to turn on their fellow humans and to pick a side. That's the quickening that I have noticed. But I was digging around a little bit, and I found, back to Annie Besant, a website, Universal Co-Masonry. And this was published in October of this year. Freemasonry and the Quickening of Evolution. Freemasonry is a system of creating change in human consciousness. It is a magical art, and the magic that it practices is the quickening of the evolution of its initiates, a most effective work for the uplifting of all mankind. What does it mean to evolve? One dictionary defines the word as meaning to change gradually, especially from a simple to a more complex form. It goes on to describe various definitions of evolution. This writer says, there is, I believe, a missing component that is defined in Freemasonry that sheds light upon the true meaning of evolution where it concerns human beings, and that is that the evolution of all life is carried on in accordance with the divine plan. Yeah, that's their divine plan. A plan designed with great intelligence and foresight that is executed across many planes of space and time. It is this missing component that I believe Freemasonry identifies and educates us upon so that we may more effectively evolve ourselves and thereby assist in the evolution of all life. Oh yeah, they can just keep their assistance to themselves as far as I'm concerned. He goes on to write, if we begin from the Hermetic premise, it's Hermes, that all is mind, that all forms, essences, and ideals are the creation of a great universal mind, it then follows that this mind creates, dissolves, and evolves the forms of the material world and the non-material essences and entities that inhabit it according to thought. This is very interesting discussion of evolution and Freemasonic magic and ritual. And in this conversation, Alex, the host, takes a call from a man who has been involved in Wicca. And it's interesting. So back to an upcoming talk. Yes, I think we're going into a new dark age. One last thing I wanted to mention, I had H.G. Wells and Things to Come on my mind, and I just went out, clicking around to see what was there. And I came upon a talk that J. Couey, and I apologies, but I'm not as familiar with his work as it seems that I should be. But I came upon a talk he posted on the 26th of November entitled H.G. Wells and the Open Conspiracy, plus the Giga-ohm Biological High Resistance Low Noise Information Brief. And I was really fascinated by what he was saying, how he was tying in. He was playing an old talk from some Lyndon LaRouche guy back in 1999, and the LaRouche publication, I think it was called The New Federalist, and the woman was kind of giving a blow-by-blow on H.G. Wells' Things to Come movie, and there were some clips there, and they were discussing it. And so Jay Couey says, I've got the book, I'm going to pull it out. And he pulled it out. And I was just gobsmacked, as they say, because he pulled out a Cutting Through the Matrix card that had my mailing address. And there's Alan kicking the capstone off the top of the pyramid. And he was using it as a line guide as he was reading. Now, these cards and little bookmarks and things like that, what I do when someone orders some of Alan's material is I put in a little business card, maybe a bookmarker, maybe a refrigerator magnet. It all has, Alan, quotes by him or whatever on there. And I'll usually put a little note there and I'll say, here are a few extras that you can share with others, or just keep and enjoy it yourself. And I just yesterday or the day before, I was preparing a book to mail out to someone, and there I got together again a little bookmark and the magnet and the business card, and I wrote the same note out there. Here are a few little extras that you can share with others or keep and enjoy. And I wondered to myself, does anyone ever share these, or do they just keep them and enjoy them? And it tickled me silly to see Jay Couey using an Alan Watt business card as his line guide. And there was my confirmation. Yes, people do share this. And so I have no idea if Jay ever listens to any of Alan's talks. But there you go. I have a suspicion that he might. I bring this up because I'm going to post this link, and it's very interesting. And he says things that are kind of scientifically above my ability to comprehend, but I do listen, and slowly I'm getting a few key concepts that are helpful to me. But one of the things that impresses me, because I looked at something that he did maybe a year or two ago, and it was, all really intense science, much of which I really didn't understand, because he's a biologist, and I hadn't checked back on his stuff for a while. And so this particular talk, what it showed me is he was getting a deeper bird's eye view of who is behind this and how long they have been behind it. And he actually mentioned a Jonas Salk book entitled The Survival of the Wisest. And I went over to Internet Archive and I pulled that book up and had a look at it this afternoon. And, he was pointing out that the Salk Institute is where Robert Malone had worked and done his most significant work. So Salk, let's just see if I can pull him up really quickly so that you can see. Because again, this idea there, here is Elon Musk, the pro-natalist, the little puck, the mouthpiece for an elite class who are going to survive whatever cataclysm comes next, whatever cataclysm they might have created, and take themselves into the New Age, and don't for a moment think they're taking us with them. But Jonas Salk was an American virologist and medical researcher who developed one of the first successful polio vaccines. He was immediately hailed as a miracle worker when the vaccine success was made public in April 1955. He chose not to patent any profit from it, etc. He started the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in La Jolla, California. He campaigned vigorously for the rest of his life, calling the against disease a moral commitment. So, lots of interesting things. I hope I've hit on the highlights. I know one thing for sure, I've talked too darn long. So have a great week. Oh, one last thing, just in case Jay Couey is listening or ever comes across this. He was involved as a scientific expert and a help on the writing. So he said this in the interview. I'm no expert on things Jay Couey, but the writing of an RF called, I think it was Cover Up. Let's see if I can find that. The So from my limited understanding of Couey, what he has done is back away from his involvement with some of these people that he is now critical of as being players in creating a narrative that we are supposed to receive about what happened in 2020 and what is happening going forward. And his understanding of led him to very different conclusions, but he posed the question or said something to the effect of he still wondered if Jr. had not been misled by these people who had co-opted their own narrative. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about science to be able to answer that question, but I do know that I have called RFK Jr. in my little pantheon of gods Horus. He's the protector of the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh is Trump. Ancient family, so RFK Jr., the falconer. We're looking at people that, well, let's just say they're very, very different to you and me. Enjoy this talk. Take care. Have a good week. And that's about it.
Alan Watt is our guest. Check out his website, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. Now, honestly, I don't know where this guy gets his energy. I mean, he's on RBN, he's on the Alex Jones show. He, like I said, he has his own show, and I think he used to do shortwave a long time ago. Now he's all over the web. Literally, the guy's popularity has just exploded in the last couple of years. He did a talk sometime last year about brain chips, 2025, the globalist revolution, their own revolution to take control of humanity. Somebody literally took his speech and added images to it and went over the article, backing up everything he was saying. I came across the article. And again, these are just admissions. These are just mild admissions of what's to come. So if you want to take a look at that, you might want to try some Google search terms, 2025 brain chips, flash mobs, all into Google video, and you're going to get quite a treat. And with that, we are going to go directly to Alan. Hello, sir. All right, Hello? Alan, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm staying out with the thunder. We've had thunder since 2 p.m. yesterday.
Well, you know, I didn't get into Earth changes tonight, but there's a lot of things moving around right now. What is the weather like up in Canada?
Well, heavy aerial spraying with the polymer-type clouds, these wispy ones that stretch across the sky. And you watch them spraying and building the storm, and you can actually tell when they're going to create it now. I'm so used to it. And sure enough, it started yesterday at 2 p.m., thunder and lightning, massive rainstorm, and then it clears up in the evening, and it's back to the same thing the following day. This has been 2 months of this. And you can watch them making the storm on a daily basis. The HAARP, you can pick up on the shortwave, and it's banging away there. And they must convince the populations that we're causing the problem. That's the whole trick behind this. And most people, unfortunately, will believe it.
You know, there was an earthquake in China. We all know about that. What people don't seem to know about, you know, right near the epicenter. And the Chinese military wouldn't let anybody go up there and take a look, and this got reported in the Epoch Times. So I'm very suspicious about some of the things that some environmentalists think is natural. Perhaps Gaia's taken its power back and is going to destroy the human race. You know, I see a lot of things here that are, affecting the food crops. What's your take on that?
There's no doubt. I mean, many people have been watching the destruction of the farms. That was a priority under the United Nations agricultural committees years ago, back when they said, in the 50s, they said that farming was too important to be left to farmers and the family farm. And so there was a war on farmers. And if you've noticed, the bread baskets of Canada and the U.S. has been hammered pretty well every year since the Berlin Wall came down. Now, our main exports at one time were to the Soviet Union. We fed the Soviet Union right through their entirety, their whole life. And once they started to feed themselves and get food from elsewhere, suddenly these storms hit Alberta, Saskatchewan areas, and the Midwest farming in the U.S., and you're getting floods every year or droughts every year. This year it's flooding again, and so they're putting the last of the farmers out of business. And then in come the corporate farmers. They join all these farms together, and they've massive farms, and 5 corporations own the food supply of the planet. This is a warfare strategy. You always go for the food supply.
Every time. And what do they say, Alan? They say, now's the time for people to really give in to the wonderful science of genetically modified food, big agra. Yeah. And so here we are talking about these farms. I see a lot of people out in the future losing their farms for something else in the future. In the next year, you look at Iowa and the corn. Let's take a look at who owns that land next year and what they're doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, look, we got a couple calls that are waiting. I know we barely got into the conversation, but I want to bring up Jim in Oregon because I let people know that you're going to be on with us tonight, Alan, and I want some people, in addition to myself, to ask you some questions. You know, they said that the atmosphere looked a little bit strange in the area around the Chinese earthquake right before it actually happened. About 30 minutes before it happened, there was some interesting lights in the sky. I don't exactly know what that's all about, but it is something we have to look at.
It's the HAARP technology. It uses the ionosphere, and you can actually watch them doing it here, in fact, where I am. And the HAARP acts the same way as the aurora borealis. You'll see a northern light type effect fluttering across the sky. And when the HAARP is being used, it's very regular. It pulsates across the sky. And when it builds up the standing wave, it literally hits the earth, and that's when you get the earthquake. Yeah.
All right, let's talk to Jim in Oregon, and we got a break coming up. When we get back from the break, Alan, let's get into what's going on today with this whole push to put people in the cities, because I'm very concerned about that. And we're also today going to be talking about subliminals, mind control, and the other things that are out there. All right, so with that, let's bring up Jim in Oregon. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hey, Jim. You're on the air, buddy.
Am I on? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say my name was Jim, so I wasn't sure. Basically, I wanted to ask Alan what he thought about 2012, because I've studied it a lot, what the Hopis say and the Mayans, as well as the Tibetans. But I just generally wanted to get his opinion on the event of 2012 and what he thinks might happen or might not happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't go along with these legends that have suddenly, in the last 50 years, been made very popular. The whole New Age movement backs it up, but it's either using that to bring on real phenomena, and they've always used religions in the past, especially prophecies, and what it does to your mind is when it actually happens, you think, well, there's nothing you can do. It's either written in the stars or it's God's will or whatever. That's to make you accept it. But what is planned is 2010. We know this for a fact. It's published in the mainstream papers in Canada. The last signature goes on for the final year of the complete integration of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. They've already done it. They started the last 5 since 2005. 2010 is complete. Then by 2012, the UN is to be brought up to power as world government. That's what the agenda is.
And by 2012, they want everything HD, and I wonder why. I mean, perhaps they have some subliminals ready to go, make sure that, they have some sort of, a backup plan to hold down consciousness. I don't know, Alan. I think we do live in interesting times. Let's pick up on this after the break. We'll be back, Jim. What needs to happen now for us to survive and share information is for us to be open to one another, even if we disagree with one another over 2012 and things of that nature. We do know that we're under attack, and there is this move to hold down consciousness. So to segue from 2012, let me ask Alan directly, and then we'll go back to our caller. Do you believe, Alan, and then let's get into the real stuff that we need to get into tonight, that consciousness, though, is expanding, that we are kind of learning about this, because many of us are, Alan. I see people all over that they're starting to, figure, amazing things out. Do you believe in consciousness expansion?
Not on the sort of mass scale. Well, people can't help but notice what's going on, because we're being told what's to come in major papers every day, including the 30 years of riots over food shortages, which they're bringing on. They'll cause it. It's quite easy to do now when 5 companies control the food supply. And they want to bring the population down. They've published all of this stuff. And the transhumanist agenda that's having international meetings with all top professors, funded with multi-million-dollar foundations behind them, have come out openly saying we've got to get rid of all the old types of humans, and they're just not adequate enough, and we must bring a smaller, more elite type through into a new civilization. But this is out in the open, so it's not so much consciousness expansion. Amongst the people who are waking up, you wake up into a multi-layered matrix, and they generally get caught in one or the other of the layers. They don't see the big picture because they don't have the foundation of the histories behind it all, which are ancient histories of an idea that was published thousands and thousands of years ago, and what they wanted to do and where they'd bring the world and the creation of a new man. You can go back into the Hindu religion, which basically it's centered upon with the waves. They call it the waves of time, or theosophy, where we go through millions of years, and then those who are more advanced must come through into a new age. Those who cannot make it must be eliminated. That is straight Hinduistic philosophy, and it's taught through all high masonry, which is really based on it. So this is an old agenda. We find that the Rockefeller Foundation that's helped spearhead the eugenics movement in the United States, they have their comparative ones in other countries, all networking together with the same agenda of the elimination of the masses. There are simply the junk gene types, the commoners, and how the elite must come through with a technocratic backup type of society to back them up and serve their needs. They don't need the masses anymore. And they claim that the masses are using up the world's resources. They think those resources belong to them, because after all, they're worthy to use them, and their offspring will use them more efficiently than the masses will. This is such hypocrisy, because those same foundation leaders are the ones who rule the present day's industries of the planet. They created this system, and now they're blaming the public for abusing it. We're under a warfare strategy. In war, you go for the food, for the water, and you go for all property. You must make people obedient, subservient, and really de facto slaves. That is what we're being trained to believe today. We're slaves. We have no say in anything. We have no rights. Just accept it. And while they're doing all that, they use chaos to the extreme. The family unit had to be totally destroyed, and since the 60s, the youth have used a war. First of all, creating a war between the genders and between the generations as well, to make sure there's no communication, because you cannot have a cohesive society when you want to change it into a totalitarian society. A cohesive society will fight and stand up for itself. When it's divided down to the individual that's completely isolated from everyone else, you're easily conquered. So this is war strategy used to the maximum, and you're simply seeing the final phase being put on us all today. They plan from 2012 onwards to have this 30 years war on the public, with us all rioting and mobs, ragtag mobs, unorganized. And you can see what they've done under the guise of terrorism, these massive armies, internal armies of police and SWAT teams, etc., ready to deal with what they've planned to come. And it is planned to come.
All right, let's go back to our caller in Oregon. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Did you want to go ahead and respond to that? I know that we have different opinions here on 2012 and consciousness and the idea of spirit coming here to aid humanity in this time of crisis as we are attacked by the elite. Because I do believe we are spiritual beings, that we are here for a reason. And I think that a lot of stuff that Alan's talking about is accurate, is true. But a lot of stuff has been put out there deliberately to frighten us, to make us believe in no future, no hope. And so with that, we'll go back to our caller from Oregon, Eugene, Oregon.
Well, basically, I agree with everything he says. I've been a long time, listener and follower of Alan Watts' research, and I mean, he's exactly right. The one thing that I was just trying to get clarification on was about 2012 is basically we have the Mayan calendar, which I would say most historians agree that it is a cyclical calendar, and basically from everyone I've heard of that has discussed it has said 2012 is the date. The Hopi live, I'm originally from Arizona, but the Hopi live in the Four Corners area of Arizona and New Mexico, and they believe, if you talk to the shamans, that they believe that that's their home and they're supposed to stay there for 2,000 years until 2012, when the Great White Brother is supposed to come back. And that's what the shamans say. So basically what I would, as far as clarification, Alan, are you saying that the Tibetans and the Hopi and the Mayans and everyone is basically within this plan of creating a master race? And if
well, here's how it goes. Aleister Crowley, who worked for MI5 and who was put in charge of the OTO branch of Freemasonry, he also belonged to the York Rite, was set out into the world to create what they call mysticism and confusion. That was his duty and task, to start up what they call the New Age movement. And he...
Would the term Discordia be an accurate term to describe that?
You could, but actually they have a motto. It's a branch of MI5. They get trained to do this. They still train them today, by the way. And they put gurus out into the world. These are gurus to get followers. But Crowley's job was to start off and make it very intriguing for youngsters especially, because they already saw the 60s coming into view, and the kind of culture they were going to create was already planned back in the 1920s. And his job was to start off this branch of mysticism that's very intriguing to youngsters. And he says in his own writings, in the book called The Beast 666, he says he went over to South America. He was to encourage youngsters to try and take the drugs down there, have the hallucinations, and have their doors of perception opened up. Huxley followed him with the same kind of stuff to make it very popular.
How does this
Now, the thing is, though, he admitted when he was there, he met Hopis and others, and he was admitted into the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry by the Hopis. You're led, you've got to understand that Freemasonry runs all through all religions and all peoples. And they run this culture industry through the religions and through the education societies. Freemasons admit in their own journals that they started up the educational systems in every country and put down the formats of what's to be taught. And it's the same with the religions. They're still they've created the whole New Age movement to convince the people of what they call the Grand Delusion, that you can become gods, which is really what's behind the whole New Age. Doesn't matter what branch you go into, or even start with yoga. If you continue up the ladder, you'll eventually come into the channeling thing, and then you'll want to become a god like Shirley MacLaine. So they do use all of these different branches of religion, including those ones which you're least suspicious of, to bring their whole New Age agenda into being. And when you believe that something is... See, it's not true that all experts agree about the Mayan calendar.
Alan, I got to stop you. I'm sorry. It's the idea of expanding my consciousness that helped me figure out this stuff in the first place. I don't understand this.
But what's that got to do with the Mayans?
Elite. I mean, everything is just New Age religion. I don't understand this hysteria. It's organized religion, Orthodox religion that's kept a lot of our species in suppression.
It's the same thing with the New Age.
Why does everything have to go under the guise of New Age religion? Why can't we just be open, seeking spirit to change our world, to get rid of the tyrants, get rid of the suppressors, think about living free? I mean, all that stuff is good. I don't understand why there's just this fear of people that want to expand their minds and change this world. Alan, I love you, man. So let's just go into the quarantine of martial law. That's the only way you want to talk about the problem. We can do that after the next break. With Alan Clark, heading to the matrix.com, and we're going to be discuss the world at large, martial law preparations. A lot of things are escalating. We clearly have different views on spirit, many of us in the movement, but we're here today because we know that we're under attack in terms of consciousness, the chemtrails, the bombardment, all these different poisons that are in the food. I happen to believe, though, for a reason, that they're doing that to keep people down as we go through changes, because I do live in an area where I'm seeing people want to explore themselves. They're reacting to this chaos by going, well, what is life? What is life? I know you're lying. I know they're lying. I know the media's lying. I want to know myself. What is going on? Not just religiously, what is God or what's going on in the universe, but what's going on in our lives. So we are seeing that, and a lot of people get kind of... Alan, the one reason I said that is because a lot of people get pushed into this box, inside the box, Alan, of being part of the New Age movement. And I just don't see how we can move all people that want to expand their minds, stretch their bodies, and be healthy.
You've got to stop right there and let me finish what I was saying. Now, here's my point of view on this. The New Age movement was set up to take over from the other religions. And under the guise of freeing you, they've given you heroes to follow. And everyone's read their books, and they've been all over the universe with those books. And it's written in the stars and all the rest of it. And believe you me, there's just as much programming contained in those books under the guise of freeing you. And it's fascinating to go. Now remember, too, the old books from the old Orthodox religions, which are pretty well gone by now, did the same thing thousands of years ago to young people as well. It fascinated them. It was incredible. It astounded them. So they've given us a substitute. Gorbachev's talked about it in his own book, Towards a New Civilization. He says, we must create a new religion for the people of the world. And he said it will be based on a form of earth worship. That encompasses all of the New Age agenda. This is a carefully laid out thing. Now, I'm not saying you cannot achieve consciousness individually, but you understand where this whole term consciousness comes from as it's used in its format. This comes from Freemasonry, and they put it out through Theosophy, and they put it out also through their higher Rosicrucian sects. They talked about nothing but higher consciousness. And where it led them, and if you go into these sects, you'll find this is true, where it leads you is ultimately the same path of channeling, bring in an entity, get to know it, or go and see a shaman, bring in your power animal. It's the same agenda, and they used to call that being possessed at one time. Personally, I'd rather not be possessed by anything except my own free spirit.
We have Tim on the line in Canada who's been waiting for a period of time. We're going to bring you up. Hello, Tim.
Alan, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I'm going to sort of diverge from the police state thing. I was thinking about more religion. Okay, I'll just try and be as succinct as possible. I've been following a lot of the stuff like in Zeitgeist and a lot of what you've been saying, Alan. And like my background is coming from like the Christian home, right? And like you say, the programming is really hard to get away from. But I can totally understand everything that you're saying in that it's all manufactured and stuff. So, like, what's an alternative? Because due to a severe trauma, like in anxiety, I was forced onto the path, kinda, and not really. Like, it was more of just being aware of myself and aware of how I affect other people, and having really heightened sense of awareness due to really bad anxiety. And that led, like, even apart from this guy that I was that I knew for a while, who was almost being my teacher in this because he had experienced the same thing, I was trying to go away from my Christian upbringing and go more towards just following the spirit that's in me towards like the truth, right? You know, the ineffable truth that we have, like the things that Jesus would have taught, but apart from religion, just the things that you know is true, where you know, where I'm sorry to bring Jesus into this, where you know where Jesus.
Why? I mean, everybody else can come in.
Okay, I just mean where a person can say that religion, like that all Christians are totally wrong, right? Because I mean, even me, who is like kind of a rebellious Christian, knows that it's all wrong, man. Like, it's all about money, it's all about power, it's all about all of that stuff, and I know that.
Well, you see, you got to understand, too, any truth.
Do we have everything clear there at the studio with Alan? He might have got dropped off. And you know, I think Alan does understand that, and so that's what I think he was trying to say earlier, and I think we may have him back. So let's see if he can go ahead and respond. I'm going to bring him back. Hi, Alan.
Hi.
Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, we were cut off there. I think the thunderstorms. I think. But see, any truth is going to be perverted as soon as it's uttered.
Yeah.
As soon as any organization forms. In fact, the Masons teach this in their own books, that everything becomes corrupt very quickly.
Yeah.
You look at even the American Constitution, and they warned that and Jefferson said it. They said you need a revolution every generation, or it'll be taken over by people getting their own family in until you have dynasties. So that's happened. So it's the same in any organization. See, this is a civilization, and that's the term they use for this system, which uses money, it uses commerce, economic power to control vast nations of people. This is what they mean by civilization. It's this strange, odd system using money. And with that becomes a leisure class, an elite class, and then you have a slave class. And that's the problem behind it. So anything that comes out of it, even any truth that is born within it by someone outside of it, is going to be taken by that system and used to control the people. And that's what's happening now, too, with the New Age movement as well. They're taught that nothing is really real. Everything's illusion. And I've met so many of them who have been so mind-bombed with this, they think that anything around them is unreal. That's the difference between a hallucination and an illusion. That they're out of the picture, and they don't work to stop the evil that's happening in the world.
Alex, could you hold me over?
Okay, yeah, I will do that, Tim. And then when we get back, let's go to our caller from Texas. And let's segue now, Alan, to what we're seeing now in the world. I'm seeing a lot of things with subliminals and mind control. And although we may not always agree on everything, and that's clear, I know Alan is a encyclopedia of information when it comes to the subliminal landscape that we're now living in these high-tech cities that we're being pushed into. And so let's discuss that when we come back, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Guest is Alan Watt. His website is cuttingthroughthematrix.com.
Outside the Box.
All right, second hour of Outside the Box. Our guest is Alan Watt, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And you can go on his website and listen to a large number of interviews that he's done with other shows. Other talk show hosts. He was on Alex Jones the other day again, and they were going into some of the things that we're going to be talking about now. But in the meantime, we're going to finish up with our last caller from Canada. And go ahead with your last question, sir.
Okay, hi, Alan. Okay, I'll try and... Okay. If all of the religion, and since I'm like from the Christian thing, if Christianity is all... manufactured to suppress the masses through submission and stuff. What do you personally? What do you follow inside of yourself? Not as a religion, but as a personal thing, right? Because I mean, where did it all come from? If there's, I don't see everything as just a natural law that there has to be a universe, right? I don't see a natural law as being that. And where does it all go? After death and stuff. That's my kind of question.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, again, any organized religion, whether you want to call it New Age or New Consciousness, which is just another religion. Yeah. So that's why there's thousands of books out already on it, and there have been for 150 years from Freemasonry. Then you're going to realize that organizations run these things. Now, founders, people that it's copied after, whether it's Christianity or Jesus Christ in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, has nothing to do with Christianity as you know it. That's the problem. Yeah. You have a massive dogma attached to it all for control purposes, which also works hand in glove with money, all down through the ages. Look at the Vatican. Look at the power and money and influence it's got. And the Christian churches, the Protestant churches are just the same. They're in it for the dough and for control. That's why governments generally back the organized religions down through the ages. But they also had a side effect to these organized religions, which they couldn't quite rub out over time as they rewrote the Bibles over and over. And that was, you were left as an individual with the possibility of following your God's dictates or following your government's dictates. That was always a sore contention with those in government. They realized they'd have to eradicate those religions altogether, and they prepared for doing so. And there was to be a period of chaos in between, which they would manage, which is coming down now. And it would be substituted with that which they called the New Age religion. Now, most of the organized New Age religion and the groups that you can join teach you not to look at the negative in anything. That means you've not to even look at bad news or what's coming down the pike. That's all negative. Think of the positive and just where you and your spirit is going. So you're neutralized from the fight, which is exactly what they want. So be very careful of joining these mainstream groups that are out there. And this is also heavily backed by the big foundations. Look into the Rockefeller Foundation. He funds the UFO cult movements. He has since the 50s. He's financed most of the publications, many of the writers behind them.
Hey, Alan, before the show's out, let's make a point, both of us, to go over Project Bluebeam and the concept of a fake extraterrestrial threat. And I'm definitely seeing that ramped up in the media. But in the meantime, go ahead.
Yes, once again, it's right over the media here with Mitchell and a few other ones trying to bring back the UFO idea, that there's going to be a threat out there. They're looking at all these kinds of threats from asteroids, UFOs, and all the rest of it, and we've got to take all your rights away to protect you. That's the message. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking about MySpace and other things on the website and things that millions of people look at every day. And, you know, they're asking the question, you know, what do you think about this sighting video? And what do you think about that? And I think, you know, it's not impossible that something's happening, but what I'm seeing now is not convincing. It's a little bit deceptive. Now, with that, to continue this discussion, and we are going to go to Eric, also in the great state of Texas.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, Eric. Yep.
Hi there. Good evening. So,
Good
I
evening.
just wanted to touch base with you guys on what.
Yes? Alan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Okay. Eric, I don't know what happened there. Let's try again. Eric in Texas.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear
Okay.
me? Okay.
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, I might have a little signal problem. But, no, I wanted to touch base with you guys and let you know that from a Wiccan or pagan perspective, you know, the religion or spiritual practices that I have today are essentially a New Age type of religion. We don't know everything about what our ancestors used to practice before organized religion came along. But in what we do today, it is our best attempt to, resurrect those old practices. And, you know, one of the reasons why I practice an alternative faith such as the one I do is that I see mainstream religions as have been effectively a way of gathering lots of people under the same umbrella, so to speak. And when you do that as a government, you can, to a much greater extent, effect a greater measure of control over the people if you more or less get all the people on the same page believing the same thing. This is a very critical primary step in starting to control what people think and telling them what is right and wrong and telling them who their gods are. I advocate the smaller autonomous religious groups of people who get together who, not because they all think the same thing, but they all because they want to investigate and find out the truth. And, so what I found as a coven member with a Wiccan tradition is that we're not told to not look at the negative things and be in disbelief of stuff. We're actually, on the contrary, we're more encouraged to look at everything and investigate it and talk about it. Try to have the courage to bring up our points of view with our teachers and other members of our small congregations, and try to be willing to listen to other people's input and beliefs. I don't see where, in any sense, the greater pagan society at large as a movement is being brainwashed into looking away from the negative aspects of some of the things happening in government, and we're not at all in denial. And my courage to step away from what I'd been presented with as the norm, the status quo as a child, has been the very thing that's precipitated me being a person who formulates my own opinions against the war. I've joined in peace marches. I question the government, and part of why I do some rebellious things like listen to broadcasts such as yours and try to take in the alternative information. When I see information is suppressed by the government or the status quo, in a way that makes me go to it and want to find out why something is being kept from me. And that's just one misconception that I was hearing in one of your other guests' opinions that I wanted to try to clarify, that perhaps they may have run into a few individuals that think that way, but I want to pipe up and say, by God, that's not all of us.
Absolutely, Eric. And Alan?
Yeah, I understand the Wiccan point of view. I know plenty of Wiccans. And see, there again, my little bit of caution would be, and I've even been to Wiccan weddings. I've been invited by some of the Tibetans in Canada, and understand the philosophy. And when you ask them, too, where they got their particular religion, the books just appeared on the shelves en masse all over the place, and they don't tend to question this. So they take this from books that just appeared in the major bookstores over many, many years, especially the last 15 or so. And you're being guided into something which is fine if you keep an open mind and what you're involved in. But But here's the thing, what will you use your power for? Because that's what Wiccanism boils down to, is into the realms of magic, etc.
Well, Alan, I agree with you there, because there's a lot of people that are confused about our real state of being. Like, who are we? What is the beast? Or is there a beast? I mean, what's actually going on? And sometimes there are a lot of people, and I mean, I don't like to call it all the New Age movement, because we're a very diverse population with diverse belief systems, many of those existing outside of the controlled matrix that we're discussing tonight. Many belief systems outside of the elite's control. But you do find some people thinking that, well, if it's natural and it feels good, go ahead and do it. My generation, Alan, the younger generation, they are very curious. They have turned away from orthodox, dogmatic religion. But sometimes they can go to the other end and find themselves in the arm of Satan. And I mean Satan in the literal sense, like the worship of the beast, satanic rituals, a lot of stuff that are becoming prolific and popular in the urban landscape. Some people think it's very spiritual to dabble in some of these realms. I see this a little bit dangerous. So we all have to, use a little bit discernment. And I think we're more intelligent when it comes to our heart center, and our deeper intuitive intelligence, to go ahead and ask ourselves, does this actually feel right? This belief system, the energy of what these people are involved in with sacrifice and with the worship of blood and death. Does it actually resonate with me? And so if we can do that, I think we can, stay clear in the times ahead.
Yeah, many things are so enticing, as I say, and most people, when they leave one religion, immediately look around to go shopping for another one. And this, again, was discussed back in the 1920s. They knew this phase was coming up because they were going to make it happen. I'm talking the big foundations. And they kept saying that they'd have to replace the old religions with a new one. And they have. They'd never come out and give you books that would warn you what you're getting involved into, or the ones at the top that eventually will rule all of it, because they become amalgamated. You'll end up getting a federation if it's not there already, and you get a high Wiccan order or whatever else it happens to be, and you have a new bunch of priests ruling over you before you know it, and they'll dictate your social agenda. So
yes.
I personally stay away from all religions. I don't need to belong to the big group, and that's the key of individuality. You either want to seek yourself, which is individuality, your own individual path, or you join the group. And if you join the group, someone else is running your life eventually.
We're going to try to see one last time if Illy in Texas is on the line. Otherwise, we'll go on to the matrix that we're living in right now and life in the big city. Hello, are you there?
Hi, it's Elle in Texas. Did you try to... I was off the line for a minute. Am I there?
You're here now, and thanks for staying with us.
Great, thanks for keeping me on. This is a really fascinating topic to me. I'm trying to write a book on something that Alan has hit upon. I really appreciate his courage, even though I appreciate the New Age religion that you have. It seems that you have really, you agree with me, enlightenment is the way, and... But
I don't believe in the R word. I don't believe in religion, and I don't believe. I want to make a 30-second statement. I don't believe in labels. I believe in living outside the box. That's what I believe in. And I believe that once you attach labels and names to things, you yourself are consolidating all information under one umbrella through your own consciousness and perception. Now, that may not, rub you the right way to some people listening, but I don't believe in putting everything under one umbrella and using the word religion. And I agree with Alan Watt when he talks about the individual. I'm just simply seeking to where the individual is fulfilled, but I'm also connected with the whole of humanity and where the species should be going. That's all. I don't believe in belief systems or religions, and it takes away from the experience of life itself and figuring out those things without the book itself.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. But yet I appreciate Alan's courage to say there's something wrong with a lot of the New Age. Well, it's big media, it's big business. It's become just sort of the flip side of organized Christianity. You see, but you seem to be one of the people of the New Age who has you've got your own. You're following your own path within, as Tim said, right? So I appreciate you both. Do you see what I'm saying? You've got
I do. And for the record, New Age people don't like me. They don't like me, Alan. You see, because I'm talking about the real world here. I believe in consciousness and spirit and becoming who we are, but they don't like me. And the reason they don't like me, Alan and Illy, is because we're talking about what's actually taking place, this manufactured Third World War. And to them, a lot of people in the New Age religion, or whatever you want to call it, believe that anything that makes us feel not happy inside, nothing that, things that don't stimulate our biological senses and give us physical pleasure, really shouldn't be looking at because it's negative.
Yeah.
It's negative. Oh. And so that's my beef with them, too. It's true.
Well, and my beef is something that he informed us all about, that they're supposed to think that everything is an illusion. Therefore, they're truly the flip side of the apocalyptic Christian fundamentalists saying, oh, don't worry about this world, throw your litter out, it's all going away, don't worry about the environment or anything. So,
it's all okay. We're all just going to beam up the spacecrafts. It's just right around the corner. We don't have to clean up our own mess. We're all going to ascend. Alan Watts, stay with us. Illy, stay with us. We'll be back. All right, Illy in Texas and Alan in Canada. I'm sure it's a little bit late in Alan's neck of the woods. Let's make a point of going into some of the physical changes taking place on the planet. It was kind of a unexpected discussion into consciousness. But I think our audience, Alan, did enjoy it, and we're all learning a little bit something from it.
Oh, yeah.
Illy, did you have anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, I just want to ask Alan if he's seen any phenomena like zero-summing of these control freaks who own the religions and the economies and the media and everything else. And this is what interests me about his zeroing in on the New Age. It seems that, we started to believe in New Age because our daddies and mommies said Christianity is the way, so we're going to go the opposite. And the hippies did the same thing. They believe in that, so we're going to believe in the opposite, rather than choosing our own, letting our goal of what, our insight from within lead us.
Yes.
It's like a bipolar thing. It's a bounce. We bounce.
Mm-hmm. It's a bounce, but also in the 1950s, the Royals, the journal, the monthly journal of the Society of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry was called The New Age. And in that magazine, and I think it was 52, they said, we shall lead the charge for the New Age and bring in the New Age religion.
And you have a lot of people in the 80s that were, writing about Ashtar Command. And that was a part of the whole spaceship theory, which parallels the rapture concept.
Ishtar?
Which are
Did you say Ishtar? That's a fertility goddess.
Ashtar, Ashtar, yeah. There's a lot of, that was really big in the 80s, the whole Ashtar movement thing.
Huh.
Yeah, you never heard of that?
You've actually had cults that, if you remember, the Heaven's Gate cults that were a form of, that had some Freemasonry, some New Age involved in it. They actually committed suicide a few years ago. Remember, it's all over the news. They thought there was a spaceship coming behind, I think it was a Hale-Bopp comet, and they literally committed suicide. And they were totally New Agers. This is quite amazing stuff, and it's mixed with science fiction. It's mixed with occultism and all of that stuff together, and that's the sort of thing it ends up doing with people. You got to understand that anything to do with religion, with the minds that can put this stuff together for the masses to follow, is a form of mind control. They can shape your thoughts right down to affecting your emotions and how you feel. It's all to do about how you feel about things. And when you're into that sort of zone, you start to lose your critical thinking abilities, and then you can be manipulated into doing bizarre things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So you have to be very, very careful. Now, I've talked to some of the high Wiccans as well, And it's not all fun and games and praying to the gods north, south, east, and west and all that kind of stuff. There's more to it than that. There's also a lot of sexual stuff involved as well.
Well, that's where I want to get your take on that, Alan. Go ahead and finish your statement, but that is an area that I really want to address. Go ahead.
Yes, because you see this whole thing, remember, too, when they talked about destroying the family unit, they said they'd have to literally, and they studied the family. What is a man? What is a man? What makes
What's
a man manly?
What's a man? What's a woman anymore in today's society? Yeah. It's changing. The roles are changing. It's
completely blurred, and the whole idea is to bring in the transhumanist agenda that comes out the other end of all this confusion. And they created the war of the genders. They said they'd target the female more than the male. 90% of the magazines out there are aimed at females, telling them how to think, what they should dress like, how they should be sexy. Are they doing enough of this, enough of that? And they knew they could manipulate the female more easily than the male. So that's why women were under attack. They've done it so much so that women are so confused now, trying to be at all Wonder Woman, who can hold a job down, have a family, get to the top of a career, stay beautiful, stay eternally beautiful, as all the promises keep telling her. And they end up going to psychiatrists and therapists and all the rest of it at the end of it. It's a complete unattainable situation. It's a no-win situation. But the media, and remember, Bertrand also said this. He says we shall use the big marketing companies to alter the behavior of male and female, but especially the female. It's happened. They've been under a war. And it's supposed to be young and sexy forever. So much so that they cannot be happy with one male. That was the whole point of it. When you bring in a society with promiscuity that starts, and they've said this in their books, they must try and start it before the age of puberty. The person is unlikely to bond with a person for life. That's the end of the family unit, and that was the intention of it. Now, within the New Age movements, they bring in a lot of this sexuality stuff. It blurs the distinction between male and female. And, in fact, there's a lot of talk within it not to deny or be inhibited, as they put it, between male and female. That's also to blur the usual order of sexuality. And from that movement, too, a lot of those people are now going into the transhumanist movement because they've already lost their identity of who they are. That's the point of it all.
Ely, I'm going to go ahead and give you some information along with everyone else that may have just tuned in. Alan Watt, our guest this evening, his website can be found at www.cuttingthroughthematrix.com, and there you're going to hear Alan talk to people from all over the world. Huge talk shows, much larger than this one, about these issues and even deeper. And we're going to go into the quarantine zones and bioweapons and depopulation in a moment. Myself, you can find my website, alexansary.com, ANSARY. And a lot of us are talking about the same things that we're seeing in the future. And we also have similar philosophical views, but although sometimes different. Now that we have a break coming up here in a minute, I want to say, Alan, that I've seen a lot of warped viewpoints about our roles in this society that come from the media. And sometimes, Alan, I wonder if they're coming from somewhere else. I'm definitely seeing this attack on the male, Alan. The man, the rapist. The man that's going to take you away and murder you. But I'm also seeing males participate in the programming directed towards them. And so in the segment coming up, I want to get your take on that. But don't you think things are becoming totally insane between men and women?
It's intended to. This has been a war. People don't realize this has been a war that at least openly came out during the French Revolution. With all of this, the gender bending, the separation of male and female, the end of the family unit, marriage, all the rest of it. And the state eventually would bring up the children. Well, that's pretty well happened. The parents are out of the picture. The media, which is an essential arm of government, along with the educational system, is giving the children their new values, which is really that you're all one, and you must serve the state and be an obedient citizen. That's the message.
And there's no time for a healthy, beautiful relationship to have a communion with another crystalline body of light. There's only time to work. So the programming is for the women. Fear the man. He may rape you and take you into the dark of night. And the fear projected towards men is fear that woman. She's a heartbreaker. She's not worthy. She's a whore. Don't talk to her. She's not worth it. She doesn't like you. So we're getting different programs on both sides of the fence. Let's get Alan's take on that in a minute. What we have here is a transition from sexual repression, total repression, torture if you violate the norms of the time, to, something that is something that people think is liberating today. Open sexuality, to the max, and a lot of bizarre stuff that goes along with that. So I don't think we're any freer than we were, because I see a lot of people still in bondage. Because of the breakdown of relationships between men and women, more men today turn towards pornography to gratify, pleasure themselves in a sexual manner, because, we're talking about the continuation of the human species. It's always going to be a popular thing, but the industry itself has become so dark, along with the mainstream media, that the theme or the script is control, domination. It's rape-like, it's cannibalistic. The common theme or denominator, Alan, is the destruction of the human body. The woman, the man, human attacking human.
Well, as I say, it's a war. And in a war, when you want to destroy a society, you make everyone attack each other. It's quite simple. And you do it through indoctrination, and victim mentality always works so well, so you always get one or the other, and you convince them they've been victims all their lives and down through the centuries, and give them a fake history. And I mean fake, because if you look at the history of even the Middle Ages or the Industrial Revolution, it was no fun being male or female. They were all crowded into the factories. Before that, the guys were out in the fields working with horses and plows, or digging up fields by hand, and the woman was in home making the food, etc. Both of them worked day in, almost all day long, 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. So there's no fun. No one had it easy. A small elite class had it easy, and those people never really were like the average male and female. They married simply for their genealogical lineages, and they lived off of all those people beneath them. But they've sold a generation of women and more the victim mentality that they were suppressed and kept down by these guys who just lived a good life, which isn't true. The vast majority of the public were working class people, and they did not live the good life. No.
Now, Alan, how much do you know about human trafficking, sex slavery? That's I'm starting to see more reports about that. The UN and even some mercenary organizations involved in trafficking.
The UN is amazing for this, because it's the biggest hypocritical society ever created under the guise. It's the new Vatican, It's the new Vatican, United Nations. People think it goes into countries to hand out chocolate and bread to poor, starving people, and nothing is further from the truth. It's the big ogre, and there's report after reports of them trafficking and prostitutes to supply the troops, etc., wherever the troops happen to be put. I've got the stuff here from investigations, lots and lots of it fills up my computer. It's disgusting. It's sadomasochistic as always, because the psychopaths are in charge, and they're generally into sadomasochism big time. It's part of the psychopathic personality types that run.
They try to teach us. They try to teach us to follow in their footsteps because it gives them pleasure.
Psychopaths who create a system, and this is a psychopathic system led by psychopaths, always give you a psychopathic culture to follow.
Oh my God, this is getting so sick. Now, we need to talk about life in the city today. Now, Alan, I do believe in a higher power, a universal spirit that's above the elite's control. That's even above them, far above them.
There's something above the elite, but I wouldn't say it was a universal spirit, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't fall for the universal consciousness, because it's again pushed by the transhumanists big time. They use these.
I walk to work and I walk home, and I see a lot. I see what it's like in the bars, people's, attitudes. I also get to see the Homeland Security choppers fly over my house now on a regular basis, and watch people around me not even know that it's actually taking place. And so my question for you is, in the last 20 minutes that we have, life in the city. it's very clear to me that we've been pushed into this predicament, and we don't want to be here. We don't want to be in the city, and we don't want to feel like we have to drive to work to earn our little credits on the computer screen, our bank accounts that gives us the food that we eat, that we put in our bodies so we stay alive.
Yeah.
So why do you think we've been pushed in the city in light of all this talk about, depopulation?
Mm-hmm. It's the Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century, put out by the United Nations, with a world of habitat cities, super cities they call them, where this be eventually, after the time of chaos, there'll be no private property, rental only, and a system of credits, no private vehicles at all allowed. This is the United Nations now. It's in their own charter for the Agenda 21. People should look it up for themselves. And when you're in a city, you're much easier to control. They want to bring the population down gradually, but all in one place where they can keep an eye on you and manage it. Now, Portland, Oregon, is one of the U.S.'s main prime UN-type cities. Is approved by the United Nations as a habitat city. It's used as an example, in fact, for the greening projects and for the bicycling projects. You can have bikes, apparently, or racks attached to the buses there, so you can your bikes on them. This whole movement to get you off of the vehicles. They don't want any private vehicles in the new system. And the first thing any totalitarian system, including the Soviet or Nazi, did is to restrict freedom of travel. And so you get them into the cities, and this system that's coming through after 2012 or so, you'll need passports to get out of your own area, and a damn good reason for going. It'll have to be business or something, but no personal reasons will be involved. That's what they're bringing about here with the habitat areas. They want to bring the populations down within those areas once they're completely set up. And the move is on now to get them out of the rural areas. Canada's announced, in Ontario, here where I live, they're going to triple the taxation for property in all rural areas at the end of this year to try to start to encourage us all to migrate to the cities. Yeah.
All right, I'm back, everybody. Alan, are you still there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry about that. We had a brief dropout. All right, what I want to say was that, I'm very concerned about what's taking place with China and Russia as well. Most of us now know about this whole depopulation agenda. It's nothing new. Like the old saying, nothing new under the sun. And you've been talking about it, and you went really in detail the other day with Alex. So now I'm here in Portland, and I'm in a big city, and a lot of people are coming here because they can afford to live anywhere else. But I'm also seeing the Chinese military police state and their presence in the world growing by design. What is your take on this growing beast that, to me, seems to be groomed, brushed, brought up?
Well, at the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which runs the Council on Foreign Relations, the guys who drafted up the unification of the Americas for America, that was on national television in Canada, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, in their own writings years ago, said that eventually when America is exhausted by being the policeman of the world, China is to be the superpower that will take over. That's the reason they built China up in the first place. China didn't build itself up. The West built it up through the GATT Treaty and brought all the factories from the West to China. We paid for it. The taxpayers paid for them moving, by the way.
All right. Do you think there's a possibility in the future that we're going to have to deal with, there's a lot of people talking about martial law scenarios. Yeah. There's a lot of people talking about food riots. You know what there's not a lot of people talking about, Alan?
Yeah.
A day where we're going to have to fight tooth and nail to protect our women from being taken out of the country. And this is something that I hope never happens. But the way things are progressing, if we're invaded, whether it be manufactured or not, and they stage some type of a war, I see these bastards setting up camps especially for women to export them out of the country along the coastline. Now, this seems crazy, but I'm looking at everything in the world that I've seen in other countries, and if they're planning this for our country, because we have so many women that have no idea what's taking place, and we have so many men that have been demasculated, it seems to me that if I were them and as sick as them, this would be a real easy way to grab a bunch of flesh and export it out for sale.
Well, they know this will happen, as you say, through just watching the last 50 years or so. Look what happened in the Soviet Union when it didn't fall apart and moved on to the next phase. you find the majority of women in Czechoslovakia and those countries are literally in these marriage agencies that are trying to get men abroad to get out of the country, where they can live better and have good food and all the rest of it, and have a future, and they leave all their men behind them. You have country after country that used to be the Sovietized countries. It's primarily men who are left behind. That's to happen in the U.S. eventually. Jacques Attali wrote about the next boat people being U.S. citizens leaving their country looking for work abroad.
My friend went to Frankfurt, Germany back in the 90s. Yeah, he liked being in that sick experience. He went to the red light district. There are 14-year-old girls there. You look at them behind glass. All you got to do is point at one and pick one. And this is the world of liberation? Uh-huh. Yeah. Moving into overdrive, my friends. The future is here. All right, we're talking with Alan Watt, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. Again, the clock's literally caught up with us. We'll be out of here in about 10 minutes flat. Alan, before we get too carried away here in our conclusion, go ahead and give my audience your show schedule for when you have your program on and where they can listen to it.
Yeah, they can listen to RBN. My show is called Cutting Through the Matrix. And they can find it at cuttingthroughthematrix.com website. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of previous talks for free download on the website, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And they can go over that. I fill a lot of this history of this whole new order, and I talk about the big think tanks who plan different aspects of it. There's nothing in this society, nothing that they didn't plan and give to us, nothing at all.
Nothing new under the sun. Now, in a moment, I want, if you can, by memory, because you've read a lot of books and you've done a lot of research, and a lot of people haven't done that, and that's where some of this info comes from, reading their own books, reading their own documents, their own memoirs. So if you can give us kind of like a top recommendations for books in a moment, that would be great. But for now, in the last couple minutes we have, how do you view solutions? Or how do you view how, a clear-headed man, a clear-headed woman should live life, for that matter? Now, we may disagree on the idea of spirit and universal consciousness. That aside, Alan, how do you view solutions and how to live?
The solutions are simple, really, and they're eternal. Because an individual has to go through life and try and hurt no one. Very, very simple. And also, and the Masons are quite right with this, because they got this from much, much older religion and belief in philosophy and observation over thousands of years. For every action that you cause out there, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There's no such thing as a free ride or doing what you want. Now, the black side, as they call it, says, they say, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, according to Aleister Crowley. And that's not true, because there's repercussions that affect yourself and everyone else for everything that you do. And
right, like dance with the beast, dance with the devil, do whatever makes you feel good in your body, because that's good, that's natural, that's what they say.
Yes, and if you look at the consequences of having it all, doing what you want, well, they don't tell you when they promote massive promiscuity that they said they'd have to do to break up bonding between male and female. They don't tell you about the massive venereal diseases out there that are now called social diseases. Sounds much better. And what happens to the person because of them. Or even the latest report on HIV, it's now 40% higher than they thought it was, etc., etc. They don't tell you about the drug addicted babies that are born from crack mothers and the alcoholism with the fetal alcoholist syndrome that they have. They don't show you all the dark side of the outcome. For everything that you do, there's cause and effect. And there's no such thing as doing all that you want to do. You will personally suffer, and so will other people around you, and including doing nothing about evil. I listen to people want to get to this new age world where everything is just wonderful. What makes them think it's so wonderful for this good? If they won't fight evil here, where will you fight it? Why should you get to go anywhere else if you can't fight it here? This is the battleground where anything to do with spirit and matter takes place. It takes place in the world of matter. And it's up to you to decide what your destiny is going to be by what you do here personally. Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't have a lot of time left, Alan. I think we're on the, I'm like, I got to get this guy on. I got to get this guy on and that guy on. Because there's not a lot of time left. And I got to start writing. I got to start thinking more and really expressing how I feel and what I'm seeing. And that's, I'm going to the realm of subliminals, Alan, because I feel like I'm starting to see them in a way that I wasn't seeing them. I mean, I knew about them, and I read about them, and I've seen them, but now, Alan, I feel them. I mean, all around me, all these different lies and deceptions. I mean, people are going to have to find a source of strength in the days ahead soon.
They will. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they are using technocratic warfare on the public. Zbigniew Brzezinski, a top man, advisor to presidents, worked with the NSA. He wrote in his own book, Between Two Ages, and that people should try and get a copy, or at least get that chapter that's called The Technotronic Era, written in the 1970s, where he said a technique, he's talking about electronic equipment type techniques like HAARP technology, ELF frequencies, will be used on whole continents to alter the thought processes and the emotions of entire populations, and they won't even know how they arrive at their opinions. Well, that's being used today through the HAARP technologies, along with the battery arrays of microwave transmitters. This is all part of the technotronic warfare that he and others have talked about. It's being used.
I've cited that exact book, but I don't actually have it in my possession. Hey, Alan, any other books that you want to go ahead and plug and mention as far as must-reads for anyone seeking truth and knowledge?
A must-read is Professor Carol Quigley's books, Tragedy and Hope, and the Anglo-American Establishment. He fills in through the history for the last few hundred years the organization, the parallel government that's been running and planning this world. He worked for the society. He was its historian, and he fills in all the little gaps and tells you the whys, not just the dates, but the whys, and the geopolitical strategies, including the creation of a new system, a new order of the world. It's all in his books.
Do you have an opinion on ancient Sumeria and some of the translations of the texts that go contrary to what our culture has taught us about the nature of existence and basically where the human species came from?
Yeah. Well, okay, this falls back on what I said before with MI5. And I'm not kidding, they do have a department that creates this type of thing. This is my opinion on Sitchin. That's what you're referring to. And many people who have come up after that have built their whole thing on the foundations of Sitchin. And the foundations of Sitchin are entirely faulty to begin with, so any tower that's built on it is going to fall over eventually. That's why I've been so heavily attacked by some people who use it. Sitchin has his own translation. No one else can understand it. Now, you can go in and learn Sumerian. It's quite simple to learn. I did the same thing to find out. And Sitchin literally altered everything to suit his pre-existing theories. And it was also to make you believe, and here's the psychological warfare part of it. If you believe there were beings here that made you as an inferior type to be a slave, you're already conquered. That was part of the purpose of it. He talks about Annunaki and all the rest of it. He doesn't tell you these were just nature spirits, the sky and the earth, etc. The same old story the Egyptians had, the same stuff that came from Hinduism, all the old spirit gods mating in the air. He puts them into real beings that came from out there in space. This was a very well spun story, and he's been very well funded to put out his 12 books over the years, because that was part of the strategy that fits right in with the New Age movement of total confusion.
In the last 3 minutes that we have here, real quick on this question, do you think there's going to be a manufactured Third World War involving China, Russia, and the U.S., maybe with a scenario of the U.S. being invaded?
I don't think it'll happen that way. I think it'll be done through using the HAARP technologies, earthquakes, famines, etc. That's what they've said from the Department of Defense in Britain, the 30 Years' War, or strife, a war really by the people rioting, they claim, and the police from, or the cops and the military from China and elsewhere will be brought in. You remember Kissinger said that at a speech in California about 20 years ago. He says one day that the American public will welcome foreign troops coming in here under the right circumstances.
All right, Alan, I want to thank you for coming on.
It's been a pleasure, yeah.